thought experiment. If someone could tell you the exact time and date of your death, would you want to know it? Hold that thought. The famous Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky had first-hand experience with this question. As a young man, he was arrested for political reasons or political suspicion. He was imprisoned and he was sentenced to death by firing squad. Upon learning the exact moment of his death, that fateful day finally arrived. He was let out with his fellow prisoners. They were bound, they were blindfolded, and they were read that final harrowing countdown. 3, 2, 1. Just kidding. It was a mock execution. The prisoners didn't know it was a joke, but at the very last minute, Tsar Nicholas I would have messengers come in right before the gunshots were supposed to go off and deliver the message that the benevolent Tsar, in his great and abundant mercy, has granted you clemency. He will spare your lives. You will have to go off to a prison camp, but you will keep your lives and you will live another day. For those of us who haven't been sentenced to death by firing squad, we might think at first glance, hey, these guys got lucky, didn't they? I mean, they were sentenced to death. They get to walk with their lives. Sure, they have to go to prison, but they're alive. Not so fast. This whole ordeal was so psychologically disturbing and traumatizing that many of these men went quite literally mad. They lost their minds. Fortunately for us, Dostoevsky didn't lose his mind, but I certainly think he took this experience with him, and I think it later comes out in one of his 5 great novels, The Idiot. Prince Myshkin, the protagonist of the story, has just returned from abroad, and he's relaying the story of what he saw in France, how they carried out the death penalty with the guillotine. Many of us have seen pictures of the guillotine, and it's absolutely terrifying. He describes the execution of a man named Legros, who was read out his sentence. They bound his hand and feet. They carried him up to the scaffold to have his head cut off. All the people crowd around, and he bursts into tears. He said he'd never seen anything like it. What must have been going on in that man's mind at such a moment, and what dreadful convulsions his whole spirit must have endured. It is an outrage on the soul, that's what it is. Now remember, Dostoevsky has first-hand knowledge of what's going on inside the mind of this condemned man. He was sentenced to a not too different fate himself. I think he's relaying his experience in literature form in this conversation between Prince Myshkin and a servant. So the conversation continues, and the servant basically says, hey, all things being said, it's at least a good thing that there's no pain when the poor fellow's head comes flying off, right? Prince Myshkin responds, do you know, though, cried the prince warmly, you made that remark just now, and everyone says the same thing, and the machine is designed with the purpose of avoiding pain. But a thought came into my head, with the rack and tortures and so on. You suffer terrible pain, of course, but your torture is bodily pain only until you die. But here I should imagine the most terrible part of the whole punishment is not the bodily pain at all, but the certain knowledge that in an hour, then in 10 minutes, then in half a minute, then now, this very instant, your soul must quit your body and that you will no longer be a man. And that this is certain. That's the point, the certainty of it. Just that instant, when you place your head on the block and you hear the iron grate over your head, then that quarter of a second is the most awful of all. This is not my own fantastical opinion. Many people have thought the same. But I feel it so deeply that I'll tell you what I think. I believe that to execute a man for murder is to punish him immeasurably more dreadfully than is equivalent to his crime. A murder by sentence is far more dreadful than a murder committed by a criminal. The man who is attacked by robbers at night, in a dark wood or anywhere, undoubtedly hopes and hopes that he may yet escape until the very moment of his death. There are plenty of instances of a man running away or imploring for mercy, at all events hoping on in some degree. But in the case of an execution, that last hope is taken away from the wretch, and certainty substituted in its place. There is his sentence, and with that, the terrible certainty that he cannot possibly escape death, which I consider must be the most dreadful anguish in the world. You may place a soldier before Canaan's mouth in battle and fire upon him, and he will still hope. But read to that same soldier his death sentence, and he will either go mad or burst into tears. Who dares to say that any man can suffer this without going mad? No, no, it is an abuse, a shame. It is unnecessary. Why should such a thing exist? Doubtless there may be men who have been sentenced, who have suffered this mental anguish for a while, and then have been reprieved. Perhaps such men may be able to relate their feelings afterwards. Our Lord Christ spoke of this anguish and dread. No, no, no. No man should be treated so. No man, no man. So I think in summary, this goes to show how important it is for us to have hope in our lives. Without it, we're lost. We can go mad. And to remove it from others is to remove their human dignity. It's an offense against their person, and I think everyone deserves to have their human dignity. So I hope this video has given you something to think about. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for more. Thank you.